Well, it's still him. It might look a little older. We'll come to the question of his age much later. But we're going to be dealing with weightier issues this morning. We're being joined by Senate Minority Leader, who is Senator Abaribe. Distinguished, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Mark. Always a pleasure to be here.
Pretty heavy matters at hand. And I think that when I mean the Senate, set the tone for that discussion when they resumed plenary last week. One of the matters that came up, in fact, the first and primary matter that came up, sponsored by 107 senators we gathered, is a bill titled General Insecurity in Nigeria. And we saw how heated the debate got on the floor of the Senate. And it continues to be a source for concern. I mean, our earlier guest, talked about some of the aftermath when we saw what happened in Ibadan over the weekend. There were disturbing visuals. I don't know if you got to see them.
Yes, I did.
Of what happened in the southeast as well of the country. Well, I don't know if what happened in Lagos is related to it, but we also saw what happened in Lagos as well, even though some would say that's another kettle of fish. But generally, the wave still exists, that general wave, that general feeling of insecurity across the country. And we see different warnings on the front pages this morning. Are you satisfied, first, with the level of debate that was had on the floor of the Senate, where your brother and sister senators able to reach a consensus as to the way forward?
Yes, I think we reached a consensus, the consensus being an admission of the fact that we have insecurity everywhere, and we need to talk about it. We need to find ways to diffuse the tension. And an admission also that we are at a precipice, and that if patriots don't come together to head off this looming disaster in front of us, that we may just all not have a country. So that was what was agreed. Now, the next, of course, after that admission, the next step is what do we do? Who has the responsibility? And where would the responsibility lie? I think one of the unfortunate things that we have seen is when people who have the primary responsibility, which is government and their agents, come out and now say, oh, it's not our responsibility, it's the responsibility of everyone. When you hear such things, then the feeling you get is that they don't want to accept the reality of what is facing us. The job of a chief executive is to drive the goals of the particular organization, same as government. And so, what the government ought to do is to say, okay, we're taking these steps. Step 1, step 2, these are the immediate things we're going to do. These are the longer-term things we are supposed to do, so that all of us will get to a particular destination, which is security and welfare of the people. And so when people now turn around and want to outsource their responsibility, let me just put it that way, we get very worried. And so that is where we are at the moment in the Senate.
You say that one of the ways, one of the solutions you reached on the floor of the Senate is that, tension needs to be diffused.
Precisely.
If that is the case, what exactly, are you agreed, are you all agreed on the ways and manner to diffuse this tension? Because some people will argue that when government says it is not only our responsibility, it is because they believe that even the words that we utter as individuals and as a collective at this point could either aggravate matters or could diffuse them. What are some of the ways that the Senate is thinking of this diffusion?
Obviously, so some of the things we say would, if you looked at that debate, in the midst of the debate, one of my colleagues, a very well-respected person, now said, oh, a governor has no right to send other citizens away from his state and all that. And I got up and I said, I think you're sending the wrong message. The job of a chief executive of a state, part of it is, of course, the security of the state. And if he sees that there are criminal elements somewhere, and he says, what is the solution here? How do you get rid of this criminal element? I said, okay, so we're going to profile everybody. We're going to tell people that, okay, so if you're going to stay here, then we need to know who you are. And then somebody says, oh, he wants to send us away. So that sends the wrong message. It now looks as if you're profiling a particular ethnic group and so forth. And so, like I said, we recognize all this. And the job of every patriot, starting from the president of Nigeria, is to de-escalate tensions. And in another interview, I had posited a particular position that was provided by our revered Wole Soyinka. And he says, the president needs to come out and say, I do not. You understand? I do not support this type of actions, these criminal elements, and so forth. And he has to come out and see, and everybody sees that he's owning this problem and saying, no, we can't do it, we can't take it anymore. We can have criminal people coming into this country and then second step after that.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yes.
Are you taking it, should we take it that failure to do that means that his silence is enabling those who are perpetrating this? Is that what we're insinuating?
Well, what you're doing is putting words in my mouth, but I can ask you too the same question. If you, as a chief executive of a country, you're being ravaged by foreign elements, as you claim, why won't you come out and say it? Why won't you turn around and say, we cannot take this? I'm giving marching orders to all the security agencies and all that this cannot happen anymore.
Hasn't it done that already?
No, we have never heard it. All that we heard, which the spokesman of the president, Adesina, I listened to him on this program, where he said this president has been talking about it. And when you ask, where did the president ever say this criminal herdsmen will never be tolerated in this country? Where? We don't hear it. What we heard from the inception, from 2016 all the way down is, oh, live in peace with your neighbor and try to accommodate your countrymen, you know, and stuff of that nature. And that now enables those who are committing these crimes that there is no punishment. And, you know, when you see the rest of the country, eruptions here and there, all targeted at a particular segment of people, you should be very worried. Yes, you should be very worried. And why you should be very worried is, what is it that gives these people the impetus to continue to commit these crimes? And I can posit a couple of examples. Governor Autumn recently did a press interview, and I watched it, and he said, people came and committed mayhem and murder. A particular group, the Mietiala, came up and said, we did this because we were responding to, or we were doing revenge. And nothing happened to them. Nothing. what do you think that members of that group will feel? Meanwhile, short time later, I think it was sometime last year, Obidai Malaifa was talking about his people in Kaduna State being murdered and all that, and all of a sudden he's picked up by the DSS. And what was he picked up? Oh, that he's fomenting crisis and trouble.
Well, he said something, actually.
Yes, he did.
He was picked up for his comments.
That is what I'm saying.
Yes.
But some people came out on television and said, we committed a crime, and nothing happened to them. And that is what is making everybody feel that there are two levels of justice. And you can't have that in one nation. If you have two levels of justice, then people would say, okay, if the federal government is no longer protecting us and we are being slaughtered,
one was an allegation.
So
I'm not privy to. I mean, that what Governor Autumn said about Mieti Allah Kauta Hori, and he's always very specific about which Mieti Allah, has said what. But some people, they will say that it was the governors themselves who were after Mr. Meilafia, because he did say that some governors were sponsoring Boko Haram. That was a categorical allegation. But, I mean, we'll definitely delve into it a bit more when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Just before we went on break, Senator, you were talking about the two, it would seem, two different measures being put in place for two different cadres. So some people will argue that those are two different scenarios. I think that's the point I was trying to make before we went on. I was trying to point out in the example that you gave. Nonetheless, I'm wondering, what are we supposed to be doing right now? We can see in the papers, governors speaking about different measures. I'm curious, first and foremost, because you made reference to your colleague on the floor of the Senate. And some people will say that despite all that has been done by the governors of Ondo, Ekiti, we also saw the governor of Zamfara, I think Jigawa as well, in Ondo State to hold a meeting and, try to talk to the people to explain what he was trying to say. It would seem that distrust, the suspicion is still there. That's why we will get comments like we got from the governor of Bauchi State and that we also got from your colleague on the floor of the Senate. It would seem that what is being said and what is being heard are two different things. How do we begin to reconcile, so that we can hear one another better? Because so far, so good. The argument is that the insecurity that is in the South is also present in the North.
I think basically the insecurity is everywhere. It's even more in the North than in the South. And all it looks as if it's just drifting down and everybody is worried. I think the real problem we have is being able to accept the reality. Yeah, I need to put it in context. If a governor now comes out and says, everyone who is of a particular tribe, you understand, is welcome to Nigeria. And I have relatives all over West Africa. So why do we now have a nation state? And when statements of that nature are made, what is sent and what people hear actually is anybody can come to Nigeria, take over somebody's property, land, and drive whoever is an indigent there away. So such statements, when you make them, you don't know the reverberations that it will bring. That's why we said that sometimes people need to be a little more circumspect before they make certain statements. And because some of these things have been said and things have been done without care, all that he has done is that he has brought a reaction from people to say, okay, if this is what it is, so let us respond. And of course, it is the response that will lead to so much problems within the country. And so my advice will be that people should think before they talk. And some of the statements that we heard from some of these, from what we can see in the newspapers this morning, it means that people were not really thinking. So how can you now wake and say, oh, nothing belongs to anybody? Meanwhile, you're a governor who, under the Land Use Act, you're supposed to supervise and have that land as your responsibility to use as may be required by the people of your state.
Now, I think as much as possible, I mean, until we get clarification from Governor Bala Mohammed as to, what he was trying to say when he says, oh, the forests are God's gift. Some people will say, well, yes, when you're driving through Nigeria and you're looking at the hills and the valleys and the mountains, what you're actually doing is praising God, because you know that it's his free gift to all of mankind to enjoy for generations to come. Nonetheless, as you said, the states have been earmarked, and as such, governors have responsibility to states. Well, let's push that comment aside and say, we'll put it in the silo. The others, in terms of the general insecurity, the fact that in Zamfara State, you have suffered the insecurity that our brothers down south, in Ondo State, for instance, have suffered, that in Kaduna State, in the last 1 or 2 weeks, close to 100 people, if not more, have lost their lives. At least over 2 or 3 days, we heard about 52 people losing their lives, needlessly. Under circumstances that really nobody can explain. This is a reality. And if you come down south too, I mean, Niger is not really south, but even just yesterday, 18 people were kidnapped, traveling to wherever it was that they were traveling to. There is a general insecurity in the country. Why would it seem that this has now been explained as either farmer herders crisis or the rampage of Fulani herdsmen? Some people say that is what is causing the tension. The fact that, instead of profiling the crime, we are profiling the people whom we suspect are committing the crimes. And that's why we're getting situations like what we're seeing in Ibadan, in Oyo State, for instance. Do you see the link there?
Yeah, I'm a little confused by what you're saying when you said instead of profiling the crime. A crime is done by someone. And, at every point that you need to make explanations for a particular situation, the best thing to do is always to go back to basics, so that if you take all the building blocks, you now know how you can resolve the issue. At first, the government refused to acknowledge that there were people who came from elsewhere and were attacking our people and killing them. And it's still happening. So when you say some people were killed in Kaduna, people were killed in Niger, people were killed in Zamfara, who are those doing this killing? We ought to have known by now, because it's been a long, drawn-out issue. And because we were not taking it, it was being explained in different ways, and government was bending its back to explain away all these deaths. And so, right now, Nigerians no longer believe whatever government says. Because at the point at which you start by saying, oh, it may have been farmer herders clash, and it turned out not to be. Oh, it may have been people blocking grazing routes. And he said, oh, it no longer turns out to, oh, it is now people who came from Libya after the conflict there. And it's no longer, so, oh, it is the desertification happening all over the Sahel region that is making people push down and say, oh no, it's not that. It is that some people have a way of life and therefore they must move. And so if you block them or something, then they will respond, you know. So it is all this effort at explaining away destruction of the livelihoods of people in different places. And so eventually, what now started to happen was people now started seeing, oh, so they clear off people here, kill them, and then some people start living there. What does that tell you? It means that there is an agenda behind this. It's no longer a random thing. And so everybody is really very, very worried. In fact, why I get so worried is that if you leave your primary responsibility, which, like I continue to say, is the welfare and security of Nigerians, and at all times you try to provide an excuse, what you do is to enable those who are committing this mayhem. That is why on the floor of the Senate, if you saw the clip, I said, a man who gets up and now is living in the bush somewhere, and every time you see that there is kidnapping here and the people are taken into the bush, ransom is paid, then you can know, you don't need any other person to tell you that he is using, doing the herdsmen business to commit another crime. And I think the other day I also read where Governor El-Rufai rightly said that any header who has engaged in kidnapping will no longer go back to heading, because he makes far more money from that. I can understand the frustration of governors, especially those from Zamfara, Katsina, all that. What do? And so they were forced to say, okay, let us negotiate, seeing whether these people can ease the pressure on our people. And of course, those people that they are supposed to protect, for which they are bending backwards.
Even Governor El-Rufai at some point came under fire.
Precisely, for all that. Of course, you can see his position today is no more. Because I haven't done it and it's not working. What we expect is that every other governor should also all sit and say, what are the solutions? Which one has worked? Which one has not worked? Let us see how we can resolve this issue. But because each government of this federation does not have the capacity to have its own control of the military, the police, the air force, and all that, it comes back to the federal government. So we always expect that the federal government will take the lead in resolving this issue or making a headway. And so when they now brought in new people, I said, okay, let's see whether the new people will do better.